Journalists, on the other hand, shouldn't have what you called a glass jaw when it comes to some of these investigations, citing the First Amendment and threats to the First Amendment.
Well, the First Amendment is a critically important part of the Constitution. It is not unconditional.
What does a man do when he has spent 60 years watching the world closely and then finally decides he has seen enough to speak his mind? That is exactly what Tom Brokaw just did. And the person he chose to talk about? Savannah Guthrie, the woman sitting in the very chair he helped build. Now here is what makes this so interesting. Tom Brokaw is 86 years old. He has reported from war zones. He sat in front of the Berlin Wall the night it fell. He looked into the camera during some of the darkest moments in American history and never flinched. He is not the kind of man who just talks for the sake of talking. So when Tom Brokaw finally opens up about Savannah Guthrie, the woman who now runs the morning show he once called his second home, people pay attention. The whole industry stops and listens. And what he said, it was not what anyone expected. Not from a man of his generation. Not from someone who spent decades in a newsroom that looked nothing like the one Savannah walks into every single morning. Stay with me, because before we get to exactly what Tom said, and trust me, the best part is coming, we need to understand why this moment even matters. We need to go back, way back, to the world Tom Brokaw built, and the woman who came along and quietly changed every rule in it. Stick with us until the very end. The thing Tom said behind closed doors, the part no one is talking about, is coming. You do not want to miss it. Let us paint a picture. Not the soft, filtered kind you see on Instagram. A real one. Imagine a time when the news came to you on paper. Actual paper. It smelled like ink. Felt heavy in your hands. There was no scroll. No notification. No algorithm telling you what to care about. If you wanted to know what was happening in the world, you waited. You sat down at a specific time. And a man with a serious face came on your television screen and told you. That was it. That was the deal. Tom Brokaw was that man for millions of Americans. He grew up in South Dakota, far from the bright lights of New York City. But from the very beginning, something about him was different. He had a voice that felt like it belonged on the radio before he even knew what the radio was for. He had a hunger, a drive, a need to be right in the middle of the biggest stories in the world. By the time the 1970s and 1980s came around, Tom was one of the most powerful names in American news. He was part of what people called the Big Three: Peter Jennings, Dan Rather, and Tom Brokaw. These three men were not just news anchors. They were the voices of a nation. If Tom said something happened, people believed it. There was no fact-checking him on your phone. There was no comment section full of people arguing. He spoke and the country listened. The moment that made him a legend forever happened on November 9, 1989. He was standing at the Berlin Wall, a massive concrete barrier that had divided a city, a country, and really the whole world for nearly 30 years. And right there on live television, Tom felt history moving beneath his feet. He told the world that the Iron Curtain was coming down. Families who had been separated for decades were about to see each other again. It was one of the greatest moments in modern history, and Tom Brokaw was the man telling the story. But here is what people often forget about that era. It was not glamorous behind the scenes. The newsrooms back then were loud, messy, and full of cigarette smoke. There were no polished graphics teams, no social media consultants, no one worrying about whether an anchor's Instagram was on brand. It was raw. It was competitive. And it was a world almost entirely run by men. Tom thrived in that world. He was built for it. He had the deep voice, the steady face, the kind of authority that made people trust him before he even said a single word. He was the gold standard. And for a long time, everyone who came after him was measured against that standard. Then, slowly, the world started to change. The internet arrived. The 24-hour news cycle began. People stopped gathering around the television at one specific time to hear one specific voice. News became everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The era of the untouchable anchor was ending, and Tom Brokaw watched it all happen from the inside. He stepped away from the nightly news desk in 2004. People cried. It felt like the end of something big. And in many ways it was. But something else was just beginning. And it was walking through the doors of 30 Rock with a law degree, a sharp mind, and absolutely zero interest in playing by the old rules. Here is a question for you. What do you do when the rulebook was written by people who look nothing like you, think nothing like you, and never imagined someone like you would even show up? You write a new one. That is exactly what Savannah Guthrie did. Savannah did not come up through the normal path. She was not a journalism student who worked her way up from small local stations reading traffic reports. She was a lawyer first, a real one, the kind who could look a witness straight in the eye during cross-examination and find the one crack in their story before they even finished their sentence. She had that rare ability to take something extremely complicated, a Supreme Court ruling, a major piece of legislation, a court case everyone was talking about, and explain it simply, clearly, in a way that felt like a conversation with a smart friend, not a lecture from a professor. When Savannah joined the Today Show in 2011, the show was already going through changes. The audience was loyal but nervous. Morning television was shifting. And then, in 2017, everything exploded. Matt Lauer. For decades, he was the face of the Today Show, the person millions of Americans woke up with every morning. When the allegations against him came out and he was fired, it did not just shake the show. It shook the entire building. There were real questions about whether the Today Show could survive it, whether the audience would trust what was left. That was Savannah's moment, and the world was watching to see what she would do with it. She did not hide. She did not pretend everything was fine. She sat at that desk, turned to the camera, and did something almost no one in her position had ever done before. She was honest. She told the audience she was heartbroken, that she was confused, that she was trying to process this just like they were. In real time, together. That was the moment the Savannah era truly began. She was sharp enough to grill a sitting president until he squirmed. She was warm enough to laugh at herself on a segment about cooking tips. She could be in Washington covering a national crisis one week and back in the studio the next week talking about the best way to organize your closet. And she never looked lost doing any of it. The critics had plenty to say, of course. Some thought she was too tough. Some thought two women hosting the show together would not work. Some people just did not like change. But Savannah kept going. She kept showing up. She kept being exactly who she was. And then life threw things at her that had nothing to do with the news. She talked openly about IVF, about starting a family later in life, about the fear and the hope and the exhaustion that came with it. She had her daughter Vale and then her son Charlie, and she did not tuck those parts of her life away. She brought them into the conversation. She let the audience see the tired eyes after a long night with a sick child. She let them see the working mom guilt that almost every parent in her audience knew by heart. And then there was the accident. Her son accidentally hit her in the eye with a toy. It sounds small. It was not. Savannah nearly lost her vision in that eye. She had to have multiple surgeries. She sat in the dark for weeks, not knowing if her career, a career built on seeing the world and showing it to others, would be over. She came back to that desk wearing glasses, looking different, and once again did the thing that had become her signature move. She told the truth about it. She let the audience in. That is the kind of person Tom Brokaw has been watching from his ranch in Montana. That is the woman he finally decided to speak up about. Now here is where it gets really interesting. Tom Brokaw grew up in a newsroom where showing emotion was considered a weakness, where you kept your face steady even when the story was breaking your heart, where the anchor was a statue, not a person. You did not cry on air. You did not share your personal life. You delivered the news, you went home, and you did it again the next day. That was the code. So when Tom started talking about Savannah Guthrie, the people who knew him well were paying close attention. Because Tom does not give compliments lightly. He does not hand out approval to people who have not earned it. His words carry weight because he uses them carefully. Those close to him say Tom has described Savannah as having the legal brain of a prosecutor and the warmth of someone you actually want to talk to. He has noted her ability to go from a serious political interview to a lighthearted lifestyle segment without losing an ounce of credibility. He has called her steady. He has called her real. But the most powerful thing Tom Brokaw has done is not what he said. It is what his praise means given who he is. Think about it this way. Tom represents an entire generation of journalists who believed that being tough and being relatable were opposites. You were either serious or you were friendly. You were either a hard news person or an entertainer. You could not be both. That was the rule. That was the box everyone fit themselves into. Savannah Guthrie broke that box. And when Tom Brokaw, the man who lived inside that box for 60 years, turns around and says she is the real thing, that is not just a nice comment. That is a revolution. That is the old world officially passing the torch to the new one. He sees in her something he understands deeply, the cost of showing up every day when you are carrying something heavy. Tom has been open about his own health struggles. In 2013, he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a form of blood cancer. The man who reported from war zones and never showed fear had to face something he could not control. He has talked about what it means to get older and let go of the identity you spent a lifetime building. He knows what it takes to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. And when he looks at Savannah, the surgeries, the sleepless nights, the personal moments she shared on national television, he recognizes something. A fellow survivor. Someone who showed up even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. That is the bond between these two people. It has nothing to do with teleprompters or ratings. It is about the invisible weight that comes with being the person the country turns to when things get scary. Let us zoom out for a second. Because this story is about more than two famous journalists. The world of news has changed completely. In Tom's day, the anchor was like a priest. People did not question him. They did not argue with him. They did not go online after the broadcast and write that he was wrong. He was the final word. Full stop. That world is gone. Today, every single thing an anchor says is analyzed, criticized, shared, clipped, and debated within minutes. Half the audience thinks the mainstream media lies to them. The other half is watching a 3-minute recap on their phone while waiting for coffee. The idea of one trusted voice speaking to a united nation? That ship has sailed. Savannah Guthrie lives and works in that fractured world every single day. She has to be a journalist, yes, but she also has to be a brand, personality, a person her audience actually likes and trusts on a personal level. Because in today's world, if people do not feel connected to you, they will simply go somewhere else. There are 1,000 other places to get information. The only thing that makes someone stay is a real human connection. That is why authenticity is everything now. Not polish, not perfection, realness, the slightly tired eyes, the honest answer, the moment where you admit you do not have all the answers. Those are the moments people replay. Those are the moments that build real loyalty. Tom Brokaw was the voice of authority. Savannah Guthrie is the voice of the friend you trust. Both matter, but only one of them works in the world we live in right now. When Tom speaks up and acknowledges that, when the greatest authority figure of his generation nods and says the new way is real and it works, something shifts. It is not just one famous person complimenting another. It is the past giving permission to the future. It is Tom Brokaw standing at the edge of a world he helped create, watching it transform into something he did not predict, and choosing to respect what it became instead of resenting it. Not many people can do that. Especially when the new world does not look or sound anything like the one they spent their whole life building. Now, here is what you stayed for, the thing that no one else is talking about. Everyone focuses on Tom praising Savannah's skills, her sharp legal mind, her ability to handle big interviews. And yes, all of that is true and worth celebrating. But the people closest to Tom say there is something deeper behind what he expressed. Tom Brokaw, in his own way, has admitted something extraordinary. He has admitted that the version of journalism he practiced, the stoic, distant, godlike authority figure, could not exist today. Not because the world got worse, but because people finally got honest about what they actually needed from the person holding the microphone. They did not need a statue. They needed a person. And Savannah Guthrie was the first person at that level of the industry to truly understand that and live it every single day. So when Tom speaks up about her, he is not just handing her a trophy. He is quietly, humbly, admitting that the way he did things, the way that made him the greatest anchor of his generation, would not be enough anymore. And he is okay with that, because he can see that what replaced it is something just as valuable, just different. That is the real story, not the famous anchor praising the famous host. The real story is a man who spent 60 years being certain of exactly how things should be done, choosing at 86 to be humble enough to say that someone else found a better way. That kind of honesty at that stage of life from that kind of person, that is incredibly rare. And it tells you everything about both of them. Tom Brokaw and Savannah Guthrie are separated by 40 years and two completely different worlds. But they share the same thing at their core. They both kept showing up. Through illness, through scandal, through sleepless nights and personal losses and the constant noise of an industry that never stops moving. They kept showing up. And maybe that is the real lesson here. Whether you are a legend at 86 or a trailblazer at the peak of your career, showing up, being honest, and doing the hard work even when no one is watching is what separates the truly great ones from everyone else. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Savannah Guthrie has earned her place as the face of morning television? Or do you miss the era when anchors like Tom Brokaw ran the show? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I read every single one of them. And if you found this video interesting, if you learned something, if it made you think, hit that like button. Takes 2 seconds and it genuinely helps more people find this channel. Subscribe if you are not already part of this community. We go deep on the stories behind the headlines. The real stories. The ones that actually tell you something about the people involved. We will see you in the next one.